I'm giving birth in this pool. Baby's head is right there, and then the front door opens. This is the story of how I gave birth to my first child in my home office. Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm a stay-at-home mom who's skeptical of the status quo, and I'm reshaping my life by stepping away from convention. Welcome to part 3 of my birth series. This is the one you've been waiting for. This is the day I finally popped. I'm going to be giving you all the details of what went down the day of. It's going to be real and it's going to be messy. I'm not going to stretch this out too long. Let's just get into it. According to the experts, my due date was September 5th, 2023, but I knew that only 5% of babies are actually born on their due dates, so I didn't have that expectation at all. In fact, I always felt that my baby was going to be just a little bit earlier than my due date. When my husband and I started discussing when we should set up the birth pool, I told him I'd be ready on Friday. On Wednesday night, we blew up the birth pool, well, mostly my husband did, set up some twinkly lights, and then on the Thursday, we filled it up halfway with water just in case, and then we went outside and we looked at a beautiful full moon. And then I woke up on Friday at 3 a.m. feeling a bit crampy. I didn't really know what real contractions felt like. I had had false contractions towards the end of my pregnancy. So to figure out what was really going on, I sat in the bath and I did some timing of the contractions, which were 3 to 5 minutes apart, but they were super, super mild, kind of just like period cramping. But of course they weren't going away. Now, my husband at the time was working far away from home, so he would get up at 4:30 in the morning. And he woke up to find me in the bath. He said, "Are you okay? Everything okay?" And I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. Just go to work. I continued about my morning. I wasn't going to go back to sleep, so I just decided to take the dog for a walk. And I remember my midwife telling me, if you feel a contraction that really stops you in your tracks, then give me a call. So I walked the dog and I was in the park, la 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 la. And then, woof, it hit me. So I said, ooh, I better head back home. So I called my midwife at around 7:30 a.m. and I said, you know what, I think I'm having contractions. She stayed on the phone with me for a while and gave me a few pointers. And then she said she'd come to my home in a few hours to check in. Of course, after I got out of that phone call, I called my husband and I said, it's time to come home. It's happening. I also called my parents to say happy Labor Day weekend. My mom was like, oh my God, is it happening? Yeah, it's happening. And it would be time for them to pick up the dog soon. My husband showed up and he started warming up water for the birth pool. We actually got the water from my parents' place because they have a well and they don't have city water and we're hippies like that. So it was a lot of work for my husband to put pots on the barbecue and the stovetop, warming everything up, dumping it into the pool and getting it up to temperature. And since the barbecue was already on, he cooked me a steak, which was really nice. My midwife, who I will call Nancy for the purpose of this story, she's my primary midwife. She showed up around 12:30 with the student that I had also been seeing. We'll call her Mary for this story. I had seen her many times and agreed to have her present for my birth, so everything was a-okay. They took my temperature, checked my baby's heart rate, and made sure all the equipment was set up properly. A bit of time had passed, and I was already getting quite vocal. I was in a lot of pain. I was working through contractions, moving around as much as possible. My midwife, Nancy, came in and she proposed that we do a cervical dilation check. And I agreed because I really had no idea what to expect, how long I would be in this state for. So she checked and she said I was only 1 centimeter dilated. And that was just, it kind of knocked the wind out of my sails. It's one of the only things I regret during birth was accepting to have that check done. First of all, it was super uncomfortable because I was having these small contractions and it was just not fun to have anyone up in there at that point. And it didn't really give me any information that was helpful. I don't think it even gave Nancy any information because my birth actually went by quite quickly, especially for a first birth. It all just seemed very unnecessary now that I look back on it. Anyways, it was Friday, so Nancy's shift was about to be over, so my secondary midwife was set to take her place. So Nancy left with Mary. Of course, they made sure with my husband and I that we felt comfortable to do things on our own for a while, and we both were fine considering, so we said no problem. At this point, I was spending a lot of time on all fours on my yoga mat. I was also experiencing what's called the bloody show. I didn't know it was that. I just thought my water was slowly breaking. This was my first time. I don't know what fluid is supposed to come out of me when. At some point, I threw up, and my husband showed off his incredible reflexes by grabbing a bucket and catching all at the same time. It was a miracle. At around 5:30 p.m., my husband called my secondary midwife. We'll call her Lisa for this story. We just needed a little bit of guidance. We weren't sure what was going on. She told us she would come and check in, and when she showed up, I was already in the birth pool working through contractions. My husband was there to help me focus and breathe, which was very much appreciated. And then I got out of the bath at some point because I had to pee, and I threw up again there. This time it wasn't quite the catch we had had earlier. Clearly I was in active labor now, and around 8:45 I was back in the pool. I have these accurate timestamps because my midwife actually gave me my whole obstetric dossier. I have it right here. And it's such a cool thing to have to look back on now. It was such a bonus to the whole midwifery experience. At 9 p.m., things were really amping up, so Lisa called to assemble her birth team, which was 2 birthing assistants and the student. The birthing assistants got stuck in traffic, and I was in transition. And I was in the pool, and I felt this sudden jet of water. And this time I knew for sure my water had broke. There's a lot of misconceptions that your water is supposed to break and then you start having these contractions and then you run to the hospital. But no, it was 9 p.m. I had been up since 3 a.m. and it was only now that my water broke. Just a quick interruption. Hospital births are not the norm in many countries around the world. Since birth is supposed to be a natural process, medical interventions are only necessary in emergency situations or in cases of major risk. Women have been swept up in the fear of it all because of movies, TV, horror stories. If you want to reclaim your birth, it takes a mindset shift, and that requires knowledge. Audiobooks and podcasts were the key for me to retrain my brain to trust my body. So check out Audible's 30-day free trial to check out great books on natural birth. I've left a link in the description and a small list of personal favorites. This is an affiliate link, and clicking it helps me grow my channel. I still use Audible for parenting books and children's stories for car rides. Again, foregoing hospital birth is a personal choice, but like all decisions, it should be an informed one. If you're interested, check out Audible, and now I'll get back to my story. Still in the bath on all fours, I was feeling a lot of pressure in my tailbone. Yes, this was the extreme feeling of needing to poo that everyone talks about. At 9:20, Lisa asked me if I wanted to get out of the bath, and she quotes me here saying, "I'm not going anywhere. We're gonna have a baby," which I don't remember at all. At 9:45, I was able to examine myself, and I felt the baby's head just 1 phalange away. At 9:50, my husband brought me a spoon of honey, and I had some water as per Lisa's recommendation. And apparently there was a moment of calm. I don't remember that either. And then Mary, the student, showed up. At this point, nobody was telling me to push. I wasn't actively trying to push. My body was just doing it, and I was along for the ride. I was making some very deep sounds, and my husband was encouraging me to find rest between the contractions, which, I mean, it didn't feel like much rest at all, honestly. Here are some quotes written at 10:07. "It burns." That's the ring of fire. "Go baby," and "We're getting there." And then my baby crowned. I was so focused on my husband's coaching at this point that it felt like it was just the 2 of us in the room. I know at this point I'm giving birth in this pool. Baby's head is right there. And then the front door opens. The 2 birthing assistants arrive at, what was it? At 10:10. 2 minutes later, with one final involuntary push, baby comes out. The head came out first, baby's halfway out of me, and I'm like, oh my God, she's stuck. And then whoosh! What a crazy feeling to have this just entire being just exit your body. It was just such a big release. Unconsciously, I just reached in there and caught my baby and brought her straight to my chest. Nobody told me to do that. It was just automatic. Here she is. My husband said my mouth was wide open in total shock. Then I got to look at my baby for the first time, and her eyes were actually opened, and they were closing a bit and opening up again, and it was just like, it was so beautiful. I have some quotes here saying, You are so real. You are a masterpiece, and I love you. I was admiring my little baby who looked like a perfectly glazed donut. They didn't wipe her down, they didn't take her away from me. I was just there holding my sweet baby in my arms. Now, I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl yet because the umbilical cord was hanging right over there. So I was just, it was my baby. That's all that mattered. I had an old film camera, so we took a quick little picture, which is really special to have. At this point, it was apparently time to try to birth my placenta. So I tried to do it in the bath, but that didn't work. So Lisa proposed that I get out of the bath and hold on to a chair, do a bit of squatting, but that didn't work either. And I'm still holding the baby. I go into bed and I lie down with her on my chest. And there, pretty soon after, I was able to birth the placenta. I don't really remember that much because I was so focused on my little baby who was there. It was at 10:39 that I delivered the placenta. I held my baby. It was a girl. I was in such bliss and awe and shock of what I had just experienced. I just couldn't take my eyes off this little baby girl. At 11 p.m., I had a quick exam to check if I had any tears. No tears, just a few lacerations. At 11:30, I breastfed for the first time, and a birthing assistant brought a beautiful platter of snacks, fruits, cheeses, nuts, chocolate. It was so unexpected and so nourishing. It was just a lovely moment. At midnight, my husband got to cut the umbilical cord, which had gone white. I knew I wanted to do a delayed cord clamping, so that was really wonderful. She stayed attached to the placenta it was midnight and I gave birth at 10:12. So yeah, that's almost 2 hours of her being still attached to the placenta. A quick exam was done of our baby girl, and by around 2:30 in the morning, we were left to be alone, just the three of us for the first time. We had done it. We were officially parents, and I had just experienced the most empowering day of my life. Nothing compares to that day. I brought life into this world and I did it the way I wanted. I did it without any medical bells or whistles, in the comfort of my own home. And I just got to pass through this portal that really just completely changed my life forever. And it all happened because that's what I was determined to do all along. It just changes you. Not everyone gets to experience that, and I'm just very grateful that I did. Of course, this journey wasn't over. There's the postpartum period, healing, and just learning to be parents for the first time. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking about that journey. And there were some unexpected twists and turns. Things didn't quite go as planned, if there ever really was a plan. Anyways, make sure you subscribe to my channel if you want to check that out. Go check out the other videos if you missed them. I talk about my journey finding a midwife and of course how my pregnancy went. And if you have a birth story to share, please do so in the comments or make your own video. I think it's super important to share, especially non-conventional birth stories that are positive, because natural birth seems to be very scary for a lot of people, and it turned out to be just absolutely beautiful for me, and I hope that more women get to have that experience if they want it. I'll keep this outro brief. Until next time, stay wild.